Hi, my name is Nicole Brundage, and I did my presentation on the dark side of addiction. So for this slide, I just have the two sources that I used. The first link is a study done to see if there was any addiction linked with heart failure and if it coincides with the use of substance. And then the main one, the second one, is the one I focused on for most of my assignment. And it was the study on the explanation of drug addiction, if it's more of like a health problem or if it should be treated um, as a mental condition and not just looked at like the person's a failure, and just kind of how mental health plays a role in all of that. Really hope you can hear me. For my first slide, it says, what is dopamine and why is it important for addiction? And I think dopamine, so throughout this whole course, we've studied a lot of different things about the brain. And then dopamine, for instance, is a neurotransmitter, which is a chemical message that's inside our brains, and it helps our cells communicate with each other. And that dopamine gives us a sense of reward, pleasure, and like even motivation. So when people get addicted to things, the brain starts to rely heavy on those substances or liquids, whatever they are addicted to. So they get their hits of dopamine, which is pleasure, so it makes them feel really good. And, that's how addiction can start. It can be very addictive because our brains want to keep repeating that behavior, so we consistently see that reward again. And I have some typed up notes I have over here, so if you see me kind of looking over, just to get me back on track. But I kind of just explained how eventually it is possible for someone with addiction, for someone to be so addicted to something and they don't feel that enjoyment anymore, and it can lead towards like heavier substances and substance abuses. So next I wrote, what is addiction? So addiction can mean multiple different things to multiple different people, but I kind of just wrote that addiction is a brain disorder where a person can't stop using a substance or engaging in behaviors, even if they're if they have bad consequences, like that go with that addiction. Addiction means that a person's having what did I write? Sorry. Oh, I wrote that addiction to me means that a person who is having an addiction relies so heavy on that addiction, and it's really hard to stop once they get into that addictive cycle. That's why, like, we see people on the side of the streets who it's instead of food they want money for drugs, and it's really sad. Okay, for the next one, I wrote why I believe addiction is a mental illness and a health problem. It's not just personal failure. And I kind of explained it in my summary that I wrote, but like to sum that up, I was just saying like after all the research I've done, and for those annotated bibliographies, just like the topic in general, I learned that addiction can change the structure of our brains. In people that have addiction, it can also coincide with having mental health disorders like depression, and that helps contribute to the substance abuse. It makes recovery very, very difficult for people that are very addicted. Oh, also, I'm gonna kind of touch on it later as well, but why I wrote like it's not just a personal failure is because I have like my personal story about that. Not me personally, but my cousin, and seeing the addiction. But I'll touch on it a little bit more later. Um, Addiction ruins lives and the mental health of it all. I I just think that that's true. Addiction ruins lives. I've seen it firsthand. I'm sure whoever's watching this has seen it firsthand, which made me really curious on how much of percents people actually do suffer with it, how we can help, why we can't get better resources, just stuff like that. and then the mental health of it all. How do they coincide? Why, just touching on stuff like that, as I kind of already did, but that's kind of like the main point that I was getting to, was how addiction ruins lives and the mental health of it. Where if we had better healthcare, instead of saying like this person is a failure at life, they don't deserve it, we could help more people out. For the independent variable slide, I did the two independents as a addiction and depression. Excuse me, get some water. Sorry. For addiction and depression. For the independent variable for addiction, the two like levels would be, someone who does have addiction and someone that doesn't have addiction. And then for depression, same kind of thing, someone who does have depression and doesn't have depression. And then I believe that both of these the both of these define the specific groups for my research project, because obviously without the addiction, like in depression, I don't know if I'm wording that right. Let me rephrase that, because having addiction and depression go together for the research that I've been doing. Hope that makes sense. For my dependent variable, I put decision making, because it affects the outcome and this could be measured. So I did add some slides later on about, percents and numbers. So I just think with decision making, we can measure what decisions were made to get to said process in our brain. Predictions on people with addictions being mentally unstable and needing help. My prediction was about 20%. I mean, born and raised in San Diego, so I can see a lot of homeless people, downtown San Diego. I live in East County, lots of homeless. There's signs that say like need cash, people are smoking, stuff like that. So just visually, and then doing all the research, I thought it would be kind of a higher number, and then having personal experiences too. And then the real number of people with addictions being mentally unstable and needing help actually was 8.1%, which is 21.1 million people in the United States. And that's for people that are 18 plus. So I thought, I mean, looking at that number, 8.1, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you really put it into perspective, 21 million people that are suffering. Yeah, made me pretty sad. Go back for 1 second. One of the little prompts on there, we're talking about the numbers of the independence and dependence. So I kind of just said that, like, I think that the listener of my presentation were a subject for my experiment. We'd have to question their history, their genetics, and then the history if they have like addiction, mental health issues, all those type of things. And then we could also do multiple people charts to put all these numbers together to conduct more research. I saw these two stuck out to me, and then there's a link as well up above. But just one for adults that um, with a mental illness also have substance abuse disorder. Um, that seems like a big number, with 1 in 4 with mental illness also have substance abuse disorder. So that kind of ties into my hypothesis that I don't think people are just having, I don't know if I'm wording this properly again. Sorry, I don't think I could stop. Okay, sorry, I regathered my thoughts. So I think that people with like, but people with health, like, have health problems, and it's a medical condition and it's not just personal failure, was kind of my hypothesis around all of this. It just doesn't seem fair that people just assume since someone has had addictions that they are suddenly they don't have mental illnesses also going on, that it's their problem, it's their fault, and we should dismiss them. And then there's just one more little sign over here with just some common conditions, and then just men and women with this disorder. So those numbers were just pretty high. It hurt my heart. How do I go next? There it goes. So why the topic is important to me, I kind of touched on it earlier, and I said I would touch on it now. Just having my cousin go through being the sweetest person ever. He was so nice, so down to earth. Started dabbling with the wrong friends, turned into an addiction to the point where he needed help, and he went to a rehab facility for years. And then actually um, the house people that took him in, they had to have people follow him for like years to come just to make sure he didn't get back into his habits. But seeing him now today, it helped my hypothesis so much that he was never a failure. He just needed help. He needed to be around the right people. And it kind of was a full circle to me that, like, because we were questioning ourselves, we're like, why did he do this? Does he hate us? Like, what's your problem? But he had a lot of mental disorders going on. He just needed some help. And then once he did get that help, he now has a full recovery, which I love, with the most beautiful family ever and two beautiful kids. So that's why that topic was super important to me, and that's what I based all of my writings off of for the topic of addiction so far, because he really inspired that. And then how the process helped me better understand this topic. Again, not understanding why he fully did the things he did, because it hurt our family so heavily. Like, we're a really tight knit family, and so having him do all these things to our family, it just didn't make sense. But after doing all this research, it makes sense that 1 in 4, like, these things do happen, especially people who are struggling mentally. And so I'm just glad he was a success story. The future directions in this field, I just hope that we can stop looking at people as failures and have them be able to seek help without people making fun of them, like going in hospitals and getting the care that they need. I just wish there was more resources to mental health and addiction, because my family paid a fortune for my cousin to go. So there needs to be cheaper or free options that can be resourced, because not everyone can be saved like my cousin. And then just questions I would like to for the audience to consider is if, like, they have anyone in their lives that have gone through this, or anyone that they know personally who are on the streets. Just kind of having some empathy, I think, is kind of a big picture of what I came to. Because I didn't have much empathy. I mean, for my family, because I knew who my cousin was. I didn't have much empathy at first, and now doing all the research, it showed me to have compassion, to have empathy, just to be there for the people I love and care about. But I would just encourage the audience to consider that person that you see on the side of the road, instead of, oh my gosh, they're begging for money, or whatever the case may be. Just really stop to think, like, how addictive the substances can be. And then I just had some links. Thank you so much.